Part 107. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1064. Ash Moonsong muttered as she swayed a small piece of green light to treat Gretel Leopard Nordmark's nails. Greet lay on the ground, raised his right paw, and she treated 2 nails. It was unbearable, so he turned over and stood up. That's not how nails are treated. He changed back to his human form, took out the treatment kit, and began to treat himself. The nails themselves are not the point. The congestion underneath must be drained out, or absorbed. While speaking, raise your right palm, turn it outwards, inwards, and look up and down. After reading it, while hissing in pain, I gave myself 2 rounds of delay pain modification, no, superficial anesthesia. 1 shot with the left hand, 1 shot with the right hand. After the anesthesia is over, gather your mind and debridement first. The cleaning technique is activated, sweeping away all kinds of dirt on the hands, especially the nails. Wash your hands diligently, first with soap and then with saline solution. Then he stretched out his hand and touched it. He held a small seed in his palm and it grew in the wind. A thin needle-shaped green leaf grows, close to the bruise on the nail, bends and straightens, and when you poke it hard, the bruise flows out from the needle hole of the needle. Controlling plants is pretty good. Ashuej also turned into a human form, standing beside him with his chin on his face, nodding in approval. Gretel concentrated on the treatment and did not answer. Cyrilla said happily beside him. Of course. Gretel is the best at controlling vines. He even has the ability to stab vines into people's hearts to heal their hearts. Ash Moonsong, rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. That's really awesome, she looked at Cyrilla with a smile. I really can't do it. The most I can do with my healing skills is to put the wounded person on my back and turn him into a leopard and rush out of the jungle, hanging on to his life all the way. I really can't do such a delicate operation at all. As she spoke, her face gradually darkened, thinking of her comrades who were fighting alongside her and gradually stopped breathing on her back. The blood keeps flowing, the heartbeat slowly slows down, and finally, the whole person becomes colder bit by bit. Before she rushed out of the woods with the man on her back, before she found the best healer nearby. He has stopped breathing, lost his life, and has become one with nature forever and ever. Ashu Isong also wants to improve her healing skills so that she will never encounter such regrets again in future battles. However, when it comes to healing, she can't really do it well except for the miracles she can do with her strength. Therefore, the best way she could find was to try to advance, try to make her healing energy stronger, work hard to exercise the Black Panther form to make herself run faster. It's okay, I'll let Gretel teach you from now on. Cyrilla was stunned for a moment, and quickly comforted her. Don't worry about owing favors or anything. Gretel is always willing to be generous when it comes to teaching healing techniques. He is willing to teach you as much as you can learn. Well, I'm afraid I won't be able to learn. Then, this is how to treat a split nail from the side, Greet's voice had already sounded. First drain the congestion. Then, you see, the nail is raised so much that the nail bed has been injured, the nail bed below must be healed. He moved his fingers slightly, projecting a silent phantom. The nails outlined by light and shadow are as big as a palm. Look, this red part is the nail bed. The nail bed hidden deep in the skin is called the nail root. The deep part of the nail root is the nail matrix, which is also the growth point of the nail. Focus the treatment here to promote its growth will allow new nails to grow faster. The light of the healing technique descended. Ashu Isong and Cyrilla leaned their heads close together, watching the translucent nails grow little by little, and the split part extended beyond the fingertips. Greet took out the nail clippers, click, click to cut off the split nails, while whispering. Don't cut your nails too sharply, otherwise they will grow to both sides and into the flesh. It's best to cut the front end flat. As for what it will look like when it turns into a leopard, He stopped talking, his eyes fixed on his fingertips, the focus widened, and he fell into crazy thinking, or calculations. Ashuedge coughed, raised two fingers, and pretended to give him a chestnut. Don't think so much. The way the transformation works will be taken care of by itself. You don't have to operate it so delicately. Okay. Gretel came to his senses and continued to treat his hands. He drained out the congestion one by one and treated the nail beds. There were a few fingers where the nail beds and nails were not separated, so he simply used the repair method. After the nails grow out, they are no longer alive. Instead of throwing away the healing technique, it is better to use the repairing technique. Look, it's fixed. Dots of white light, working together with the slender vines, walked around and quickly treated all the nails. Greet opened his hands, clenched his fists, stretched them out, clenched his fists again, stretched them out again, and breathed a sigh of relief. Sister Uge, that's it for today, right? Don't you want to practice any more? Ashmoonsong reflexively wanted to scold him. You can't run well, you can't walk well either, you either have the same hands or the same feet, or only one of the four paws dares to leave the ground. You fall when you run fast, you fall when you turn a corner. Why don't you quickly master the leopard form? Do you want to enter the rainforest and somersault one step at a time? But seeing Greet's disgraced and pitiful look, she couldn't help but feel cruel. After a moment of hesitation, Ms. Jasmine beside her already smiled and shouted. Okay, okay. Dinner will be ready soon. Ready to eat? Ashmoonsong sighed and waved her hand. Greet immediately breathed a sigh of relief and jumped over. Sister Jasmine, you are so kind. What are you going to eat today? Ms. Jasmine has already placed several dishes on the floating dish. At this moment, tortillas are being grilled on the iron plate above the campfire. I saw her scooping up a spoonful of corn mush, deftly pouring it onto the iron plate, and rotating her wrist. After pouring, he put the spoon back and made a virtual circle with his palm above the iron plate. The invisible force field immediately pushed the corn paste away and spread it into a big pancake on the iron plate. This is the method I learned from the locals. Wrap everything in corn tortillas, Ms. Jasmine introduced with a smile. This kind is shortbread, and the other is soft biscuit. Soft biscuits are more suitable for taking with you as dry food. I often make this dish at the port shop and give it to new adventurers to let them try the eagle's cake. The characteristics of the country. After a while, the aroma of hot cornmeal wafted up. The color of the cornmeal pancake changed from light to dark, from a very light yellow to a lively golden yellow, with a wisp of burnt aroma wafting from the bottom. As soon as the burnt aroma came out, Ms. Jasmine flicked the iron plate and flipped the pancake on its own. Looking up from the bottom, there are a few spots of yellowish brown, and the aroma of burnt meat and cornmeal are overwhelming. Come on, who will eat first? Ms. Jasmine said with a loud smile. Look at the food over there: chicken stew, roasted mushrooms, chutney, prickly pear, cucumber shreds, lettuce. What do you want? I want them all. Gretel quickly came over. Cucumber shreds and lettuce on the floor, more chicken, less chutney. Please, Sister Jasmine. Ms. Jasmine didn't look back, her fingers were slightly hooked, and a vine grabbed 2 pieces of lettuce and spread them on the pancake first. Then, the vine wrapped around the spoon again and scooped up a large spoonful of cucumber shreds, a large spoonful of chicken, a large spoonful of roasted mushrooms. Finally, the pancake folded in half on its own, wrapped a full plate of vegetables inside, rose up, and flew to Gretel. Gretel couldn't wait to take a big bite. Suddenly, the crispy corn tortillas, juicy mushrooms, delicious chicken, refreshing cucumber shreds and lettuce, all kinds of rich flavors, exploded in his mouth. Good times, Good times. Gretel tried not to take a second bite immediately, and tried to move his cheeks, praising vaguely. Don't be anxious, eat slowly, there is still more. Ms. Jasmine smiled softly. Next? Who's next? I'll come, Cyrilla rushed over impatiently. A delicious meal calmed everyone's mood very well. After finishing the meal, Bernard slumped lazily on the edge of the tent, trying to ignore Appa biting his sleeve and asking for his hair to be brushed. Mr. Hawthorne was busy helping his wife wash the pots and dishes and clean up the mess. Although Ms. Jasmine likes to cook, she doesn't like to wash the dishes. This job has always been Mr. Hawthorne's job. Ms. Jasmine rolled up her sleeves and started baking a batch of soft pancakes to prepare cabbage for lunch tomorrow, which would save time on the road. As for Gretel, he was dragged into the woods by Ashu-i-sang. I don't want you to practice running. Faced with Gretel, whose whole body was tense and full of resistance, Ashu-edge laughed helplessly. I've thought about it. You're not familiar with the panther form yet. It's a little early to practice running now. Come on, let's get familiar with the perception of the panther form. She quickly transformed into a black panther, landed on all four paws, and flicked her tail. Even in the Black Panther state, this forest guard and master of transfiguration can still speak effortlessly and even cast spells smoothly. Come on, give it a try. Become a Black Panther and try to see the world from a lower perspective, smell with a Black Panther's nose, listen with a Black Panther's ears. Alas, there is no way. Most of the young elves on Evermeet Island will be able to run smoothly after learning the art of transformation. Only some very small cubs are not good at this and require special teaching from parents and teachers. Gretel is like this, forget it, just treat him like a cub. Gretel hesitantly followed the transformation. The leopard he transformed into was smaller than the one transformed by Yusong. The black patterns on the fur were distributed from the head to the tail in circles. He flicked his tail, lay down, and looked around carefully. To be honest, after the four paws are on the ground, the angle of view is lowered, which is indeed very different from the human form. He is closer to the ground, and with every step he takes, the distance his vision moves is much shorter than when he was in human form. So he has to trip. I can't judge the distance accurately. It's like driving a car. If you can't tell how far away a nearby car is from you, it's easy to hit it. Greet looked left and right, took 2 steps, and took a deep breath. Immediately, the golden leopard face with a black ring was distorted on the spot. Vomit. Who is shitting around here? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. The last 28 hours. The last 28 hours. There is still 650 monthly tickets left to reach 3,000. When the vote reaches 3,000, the author, Meow, including yesterday's leader, will write 6,000 words a day for 15 consecutive days. Friends who still have votes in their hands, please vote hard. The author rolled around, turned his belly, and showed off his pink paws to ask for votes. Thanks to @bookfriend 202206031815288945 for the reward of 10,000 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1065. Greet hurried on hard, practicing transforming into a leopard, practicing walking, running and climbing, practicing understanding plants and animals, and practicing all the skills of living in the rainforest. I fall dozens of times a day, roll around 30 or 50 times, and bump into here and there countless times. Those who hear it are sad, and those who see it are in tears. If it weren't for the softness of his body, increased agility, and unlimited supply of healing skills after transforming into a black panther, Gretel would have been thrown to the ground. Even so, when he woke up every morning, he would be in a ball, rolling around in bed, not wanting to get up. If you are in a hurry, just hurry on. He is a good mage, why should he lower himself to the level of an animal? I don't want to get up, I don't want to turn into a leopard, I don't want to practice transformation. Want sleep? Gretel. Get up. In another compartment of the mage's cabin, Cyrilla shouted energetically. Greet turned over again and covered his head with the quilt, although in the constant temperature mage's cabin, the value of the quilt was limited to psychological comfort. I didn't hear, I fell asleep, don't look for me. Get up. Breakfast is ready. If you don't get up, I will disband the mage's hut. Ugh, Cyrilla, you're a bad learner. I just stayed in bed for a while, why did I bring up the quilt? Gretel practiced hard, practiced hard, practiced hard. Bernard and Mr. Hawthorne sat through the lessons in silence, trying to follow along and practice whatever lessons they could learn. Ms. Jasmine quietly took care of the logistics. Occasionally, she took the time to comfort Gretel with a few words. This is how it was when you first started learning the art of transformation. When I first started, I stumbled and couldn't walk steadily, and I chose the wolf-shaped transformation, which doesn't require jumping or climbing. It's much simpler than your leopard shape. Don't be anxious, take your time. Ask Sister Uge, do the elves on Elf Island be able to run and jump as soon as they transform, or do they take 10 or 8 years of practice? Gretel raised his head in response, and saw a trace of embarrassment on Ashuedge's face that was too late to restrain. Of course, I learned it slowly. Young elf, who has nothing to do but practice hard. The lifespan of an elf is so long, and the days on Elf Island are so long, why should we practice hard every day? Play the piano, sing, collect dew on flowers to make elf wine, collect pollen and nectar to make snacks. Study magic, plant flowers and plants, take care of trees, take care of various animals. There is so much fun in one day, why spend all your time training, fighting, and advancing? Transforming several times a day, the young elves transformed into little wolves, little bears, and little leopards, huddled together in a furry ball, and crawled and rolled together. After 1, 2, 3, and 5 years, they naturally learned it. But not Gretel. From the land of the eagle to the fertile forest, a forest guard like her turns into a leopard and rushes at full speed, and it only takes a month. If, like now, a group of people ride phantom horses or monsters and drive straight through at a speed that is not too slow, it will only be there in 3 or 4 months. If he reaches the fertile forest, Gretel will still look like he is now. 1 step staggers, 1 step slips, 5 steps makes one fall to the ground. It's hard to move around in the bountiful forest. Where others can easily jump over, you have to crawl over with your hands and feet, and you might just slap yourself on an ant's nest. Even if he can barely walk, it's hard to convince other forest guards, other elves, or other natives that this cub is a strong healer. Would you entrust the life of your companion to a half-elf cub who looked very clumsy and obviously unskilled when you first met him? Gretel, hurry up and transform. We won't practice running today, we'll start with perception practice. When Gretel was in dire straits, there were still some people in the far south who were also in dire straits. It's time to set off. Let's check all the boxes and the mules and horses for the last time to make sure that each one is the strongest and strongest. A tall soldier with short black hair, a short black beard on his upper lip, a pale complexion, was shouting to the entire team. Fill your water bladders. Check your food. If you don't want to eat the mud chunks of the natives in the next month, keep an eye on your food packaging. There are also water purification beads. Anti-mosquito incense. High-cut and thick-soled shoes. Check them all. We have to walk in the jungle for a month. If something happens during this month, there will be no priest from the cathedral to save your lives. In front of him, a small team of 200 people, from officers to soldiers, responded one after another, each checking their armor, swords, and water bags. As for the coolies who serve the mules and horses, those with tan skin and flat faces are much silent. The gold, silver, and precious stones carried by these mules were all mined from their hometowns. They were dug out by their compatriots with their flesh, blood, and lives. Now, they are packed in boxes and tied to mules and horses, and are continuously transported through the dense forest to the other side of the sea. It turns into the golden crown on the king's head, the necklace around the neck of the noble lady, and the shining gold and silver thread on the bishop's robe. If those metals and gems had souls attached to them, I'm afraid the anger and hatred stained on those gold and silver jewelry would be enough to drag the wearer to hell. Are you done? All right. Let's go. Rod, you lead the first team, John, your second team, Clement, your third team. The black-haired officer kept giving orders. The team filed into the depths of the rainforest along the narrow mountain path that could only accommodate one person or a mule. Soon, this small team was submerged in the vast jungle and could no longer be seen. This team started from the Governor-General of Pelu, one of the 4 major Governor-General areas, passed through the Isthmus of Vasco, and reached the waters of the Storm Islands. Then, load these precious gold, silver, and gems on ships at the port and send them directly back to the kingdom's mainland. Decades ago, an expedition team from the Kingdom of Brolin and the Holy See of Glory conquered the Kingdom of Pelu, captured its king, and plundered the kingdom's treasures. During subsequent explorations, explorers discovered that the Kingdom of Pelu had rich reserves of gold and silver and was worthy of continued rule, thus establishing the Viceroyalty of Pelu. However, transporting the harvest from the Viceroyalty back to the kingdom is not an easy task. To the south of the Governor-General of Pelux, there are endless mountains with continuous snow-capped peaks reaching into the clouds. If you don't go by land and rely on shipping, it will take several months to reach the southern tip of the New World. And there, the wind was strong and the waves were high, and the rapids were swirling, pushing the huge ice blocks into crazy collisions. What is left for ships is far from a safe channel and can only be regarded as a narrow path. From the governor's mansion to the east, there is an endless stretch of dense forest. In the words of the elves, they are fertile forests, torrent forests, rain-song forests. In short, they are large areas of rainforest. But in the eyes of predators who are not close to nature, but are just arrogant and above nature, it is just an endless forest, extending from the mountains in the west to the east coast. No one has ever walked through this road. As for the west, the kingdom is in the east. Why are you transporting gold and silver to the east and west? Besides, the west is a vast ocean, and no ship traveling in that direction has ever returned, except for the legendary Elves ships. So that leaves only the north. North, north, open the sail, all the way north, to the narrowest and thinnest part between the southern half and the northern half of the New World. Then, abandon the ship and go ashore, crossing the Isthmus of Vasco to reach the ocean on the other side. In this way, the distance they walked on land, including the twists and turns over mountains and ridges, was only 600 to 700 miles. And these 600 to 700 miles of road are almost absolutely safe. To the east is the Storm Islands under the rule of the kingdom, to the west is the endless ocean, to the south is the Viceroyalty of Pelu that has been included in the rule, and to the north? Not to mention. This section of the Vasco Isthmus is still considered the boundary of the governorate of the Storm Islands, even further north. Oh, further north there is an indigenous country called Eagle Country, but it is also thousands of miles away from the isthmus. Their hands have never been stretched so long. Of course, something has happened in the Eagle Kingdom recently, and it is said that it has colluded with the evil pagans. To this end, the governor has also made a series of arrangements just in case. However, what this team transporting gold and silver needs to be wary of most is the indigenous people and magical beasts along the way, as well as the unpredictable majesty of nature. Those nasty humans are here again. In the rainforest, A dark green figure flashed behind the tree trunks, almost blending into the dense canopy. He looked at the team from a distance, his brows furrowed, and the tips of his ears trembled slightly. The people who destroy nature are here again. Sisoyan sighed. Those outsiders, they open up the mountains and forests, they cut down the trees. They sent strong men to kill the powerful monsters near this passage. If they couldn't kill them, they drove them away. 200 miles to the south and 200 miles to the north, creating an artificial corridor. They drove slaves and used mules and horses to carry backpacks of cobblestones to pave roads in the vast jungle. To this day, the bones of slaves, together with the piles of cobblestones, still guide the direction of this post road. They even wanted to destroy this jungle. He once followed the team that opened the post road, and heard them say with his own ears, in the future, when there is enough manpower, a canal will be opened here to allow ships to pass from one side of the ocean to the next. You can reach the other side directly. How many forests and plants will be destroyed, and how many animals will lose their homes? Sisoyan tightened the green cloak around him to cover his weather-beaten face. As the guardian of this rainforest, he has been worried about it for many years. Ask for help from your compatriots in the Forest of Plenty, the Forest of Torrents, and the Forest of Rainsong, but they themselves cannot spare any manpower. Asking for help from the compatriots on Elf Island, life on Elf Island is actually not peaceful. Fortunately, year after year, the canal builders never came. He looked at the horse team meandering on the mountain road and sighed softly. Forget it, there are experts in this team and we can't beat them. It's better to go around to the front and notify the people in the surrounding villages to hide, so as not to be ruined by them. Sisoyan leaned against the tree trunk behind him and blended in quietly. After a moment, he appeared outside another tree trunk in the distance. By making use of the big tree in this way and constantly moving, he will soon be far away. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. The last 12 hours. The last 12 hours. We have already passed the goal of asking for votes, with 471 votes left to go. Can we get 3,000 votes this month? When the vote reaches 3,000, the author, Meow, including yesterday's leader, will write 6,000 words a day for 15 consecutive days. Meow, come into the author's paws. Look at my pink claws. Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1066. Damn it, what an unlucky place. Gil made a pop sound and slapped his neck with his backhand, drawing wet blood from his hand. This damn rainforest. This damn rainforest. Mosquitoes with flowery legs have 6 legs spread out, each one is as big as a palm. If you bite a person, you will get a big red bump, which is painful and itchy. Walking in the woods, I was wet from head to toe. Even if I stood or lay still, I was covered in sticky sweat. It only takes 1 day at most for the clothes to smell bad, and the shoes and socks on the feet to smell terrible by the 3rd day. What a waste. A few places behind him, Jazz stepped out of a creek and was also yelling curses. There were leeches hanging everywhere on his trouser legs, ankles, back, and arms. He didn't even have time to swat the leeches for himself. He lit a bunch of grass first, and together with the slave in charge of driving the mule, he quickly burned the leeches off the mule. What a ghost! Just after wading across the stream in such a short time, dozens of leeches were already hanging on the mule, and each one was swollen. If we don't burn them off quickly, the mule will fall down, and hundreds of kilograms of gold will be lost. Do they carry it themselves? Even if you don't wade through the water, it's useless. When you bend down and pass under a low-hanging branch, a few leeches will fall into your neck. It's better to go to the viceroyalty of Pelix. High in the mountains, the climate is dry and there are no such things. There are no mosquitoes, no leeches, no poisonous insects, and no stiflingly hot climate. No wonder everyone gets an extra half-year's salary after going on an escort mission. This half-year's salary is really not easy to earn. Compared to crossing one's feet in the city, slapping the native's whip, and playing with the native's girl, such a life is simply not what a person should live. The soldiers complained repeatedly, and the squad leaders and squadron leaders also had a hard time. In this team of 200 people, the 5 squadron leaders are all at level 9, and the 20 squad leaders are all knights who have entered level 5 for the first time. Their strong physique makes them more adaptable to harsh environments and less afraid of harassment by poisonous insects and leeches, but it does not make them feel more comfortable when facing bad weather. On the contrary, the noble status of high-level warriors made them feel even worse when they were trekking in the rainforest. "Colonel, why did you send us out this time?" Yes, in the previous escort teams, the team leader could be up to level 9, and a knight could become the captain. This time, why did you send so many high-level knights? I've walked this road dozens of times, and nothing has ever happened. I had agreed to take a month off to go on a date with my beloved Anna, but suddenly I was transferred here. My vacation. My Anna. Come on. Your Anna is about to marry the youngest son of Baron Blue. That doesn't stop me from dating her. 2 days a day, 3 days, and 5 days. When they first entered the jungle, the knights could still maintain a neat appearance and clean uniforms. 3 days later, it was wrinkled from the inside out and exuding an unpleasant stench. 10 days later, everyone was unkempt and unshaven. At a glance, regardless of height and figure, there is almost no difference between knights, soldiers, and slaves. It's been so hard along the way. Yeah, it's too hard, it's hard and boring. Not only did no one come to rob us along the way, there weren't even any wild animals, and we didn't know what we were escorting. What I do most is drag up the slippery mule. Sisuian's face was dark. He has been following this team for 10 days. For 10 days, he kept jumping among the trees, communicating with the jungle and warning the animals. Someone very powerful is coming. Someone very vicious is coming. Avoid it. Avoid it. Don't hit their path. Leopard, red monkey, tapir, capybara. Tiger cat, night monkey, spider monkey. Giant anteater, crocodile, anaconda. One by one, they answered his call. Either disappear in the forest, or temporarily migrate to both sides. Elf forest guards never interfere with the hunting between animals, or even the hunting between local indigenous people and animals. But for outsiders, for those pesky nature destroyers, the elf wardens will certainly send a warning to their animal friends. Except for mosquitoes, centipedes, ants, and leeches, these slow and numerous poisonous insects, any animals that can run away try to run as far away as possible without attacking or being attacked by outsiders. This makes the team transporting gold extremely boring. It's been 10 days. It's been 10 days and I haven't even been able to hunt down a decent beast. I can't even hunt for a tooth sacrifice and a meal. Captain. I found a village. The scouts who went out to explore the road came back excitedly to report. Although they were walking in the hinterland of the Governor-General's district, in a safe area where even wild beasts were away, this team still maintained basic military discipline. Exploring the road ahead, guarding in sections in the middle, and finishing at the end. There is no need to eliminate traces in this fast-growing tropical rainforest, even existing roads will soon be submerged by the rainforest. What they need to do is to maintain the roads, especially the collapsed post roads that need to be reinforced, and the magical road signs that guide the direction at every fork in the road need to be replaced. Bridges that are almost finished require cutting down new trees to build them. The campsite, which was submerged by shrubs and small trees, needs to be reopened. This kind of work is extremely hard and extremely boring. Therefore, when the scouts reported that they had discovered an indigenous village, everyone became excited. "Colonel, let's go live in the village." "Yeah, let's go to the village to do some repairs. At least I can live in a place with a roof. Even if it's a mud house, it still has a roof." There was so much chattering that it almost turned into a quarrel. Although the colonel leading the team was a level 13 knight, he couldn't force the demands of so many people. The team walked for a while, and under the guidance of the scout, he lowered his head and looked down. "It looks like we're not far from the right road, then let's rest for one night." "We can only rest for one night. We'll continue on our way early tomorrow morning." It is said to be a village, but in fact, it only has a dozen or so shabby houses. Some are made of mud, and some don't even have mud walls. They just cut down some tree trunks and tied them into frames, and then cut some branches to fill in the middle. The better ones will tie a straw mat between the branches, then apply some mud on it, and it will become a wall. What? It's so broken. There's no one in the village. Not only are there no people, there are no chickens, no ducks, no rabbits, no livestock of any kind. The animal pen where the livestock was kept was found, but was taken away. The knights, the warriors, complained. Speaking of which, who really wants to live in these native houses? Who really wants to live in these stuffy, hot, dirty, and smelly houses with thatched roofs, mud walls, or even walls with no mud at all, centipedes and scorpions falling from the roof at any time, rats running in and out of the cracks in the walls? Aren't you too tired and depressed from running, and want to find a village to rest, find some chickens and ducks raised by the natives for a change, and have fun with some native girls? They got the news in advance. They're guarding us. These natives must have received the news in advance. Livestock, grain, everything, they were all dragged away. The knights were disappointed. The scout captain who led the way received the most accusatory looks. He stamped his feet and quickly walked around the village. There are no masters in this village. Judging from the traces in the village, they have been gone for a day or two at most, they can't go far. Do you want to chase? Chasing? Anyway, it takes a day or two for ordinary people to walk, but we can catch up in 2 hours. Even if you are idle, you should be idle, just use it to stretch your muscles. In fact, in less than 2 hours, they found the native village with their families hiding in a cave. Then, the 3 knight captains came back, each carrying a native girl who was kicking, beating, and screaming. This village is so dilapidated. The team leader raised his arm and gently threw the native girl to the ground. There are only so many interesting things. Colonel, we didn't even get started, so we brought them back to you first. Sisoyan wiped the sweat from his forehead. It was really tiring to deliver the baby for the doe. It took him half a night. If he hadn't rushed over, the doe that was having difficulty giving birth would definitely have died. Help! 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 An emerald green parrot flapped its wings and plunged into his shoulder. Sisoyan was suddenly startled. What happened? What happened? He has already walked along the routes used by outsiders to transport goods and warned all the animals. He also warned all the indigenous villages within visual distance of the road and told them to move out and avoid them. How could something happen like this? The elf forest guard touched the doe that had just given birth to a calf, condensing a force of nature to soothe her body. Then, he walked to a big tree, knelt down on one knee, and pressed the root of the tree with his hand. Leaves, mountain breeze, shrubs, and trees are all rustling. The entire rainforest was responding to him and guiding him in the direction. There. There. Outsiders, there. Sisoyan quietly disappeared into the trees. After several jumps, he stood outside the village, listening to the wailing of the indigenous girl and the increasingly weaker screams. With a cold face, he inserted the wooden stick into the soil under the tree. Brute! Brute! Even if I can't defeat you, I, Sisuyan, the guardian of this forest, will never let you go. Hundreds of miles away, Gretel was standing in front of a big tree, trying his best to raise his head. Wow! This is a tree? Wait, is this really a tree? He took a step back, then a step back, and another step back. After taking 34 steps back in a row, the uneven wooden wall was still blocking his way. If it weren't for the unusually obvious wrinkled bark, Gretel would have almost thought that what was standing in front of him was a hill. The diameter of this tree can be 10 meters. 20 meters. 30 meters or more, right? Opening his arms, dozens or hundreds of him felt like they couldn't hug this big tree. He tried to raise his head, and from the top of this hill-like giant tree, countless thick branches branched out in all directions. The dense canopy of trees blocks out the sky and the sun, and there is vitality in the ancient. Rest here tonight, AI-11 UGE commanded without hesitation. Gretel, Jasmine, you too, go to the tree and meditate, try to meditate as close to the tree as possible. Listening to the voice of this ancient tree is very beneficial to the worshippers of nature. Go. Greet longed for this sound. Holding the oak staff, he leaned against the bottom of the tree trunk, specially leaning the top of the oak staff against the tree trunk. Just before closing his eyes, he turned his head. Appa, why are you here too? What are you doing huddled up on your knees under a tree and resting your head on the tree? Do you also want to learn to meditate? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Last 4 hours. The voting goal has been passed halfway, with 374 votes left. Can we get 3,000 votes this month? When the vote reaches 3,000, the author, Meow, including yesterday's leader, will write 6,000 words a day for 15 consecutive days. Meow. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1067. Gretel is dreaming. In the dream, he turned into a seed again, fell into the soil, and was embraced by the earth. After sleeping in the soil for half an autumn and a winter, it began to sprout and grow. From young seedlings to tall trees. From a group of saplings, which is neither the tallest nor the strongest, to the only remaining one among the surrounding saplings. It's pretty quick to integrate into nature not far away. Aizwij, who was helping with the cooking, looked up and spoke with appreciation. At the same time, Jasmine had just adjusted herself and started to meditate. Apa was still writhing around under the tree, moving his mouth, as if he couldn't stay still, and planned to take a few bites of the grass under the tree before talking. And Gretel, he has entered the dream of the big tree. I really can't believe that this clumsy cub, who has never received formal elf training, has such good qualifications. Gretel is still sleeping in the dream of the big tree. 1 foot taller and 1 inch thicker. The sun rises and the moon sets, the rainy season and the dry season. Being exposed to the sun, being drenched by heavy rain, the fear of being struck by lightning, the pain of being burned by fire. The fire was extinguished by the heavy rain and continued to grow. The leopard sharpened its claws on the tree trunk, the bear rubbed its chest on the tree trunk, and the bark cracked inch by inch, but the big tree that stood still endured everything silently. The tree grows taller, blooms, bears fruit, and drops its fruit. Gradually, the young trees in the entire forest are his descendants. Gradually, when it grew as thick as a hill and its dense crown reached into the sky, colorful birds built nests on the top of the tree. The big bird was as hot as a flame, and the giant tree was a little scared at first, but gradually, it learned to introduce the scorching power into its body, making the branches stronger and making the trunk no longer afraid of flames. Big birds build nests, attract mates, lay eggs, and nurse their young. The rainy season and the dry season come back again and again, and the big birds finally take their children and spread their wings and fly away into the distance. At some point, Gretel's dream had turned to the big bird. He watched the sea of trees under his feet continue to extend, and the blue waves rolled and swished backwards. Feel the strong wind holding up the wings of the big bird, flowing between the gaps in the feathers, and how the rising, falling and tumbling airflow helps it move forward. Feel how it rises, flies level, dives, lands, flaps its wings rapidly, how it fights with its wings, claws and beak, how it unexpectedly spits out flames. These two big birds flew south, south, and kept flying south. Suddenly, a burst of heart palpitations came over me, and the whole world shook. It's not heaven and earth, it's forest, it's nature. Greet understood immediately. In the sight of the big bird, the entire forest is shaking, nature is boiling, angry, and angry in response to the breath of its beloved. Below, in the forest that was about to fall into night, there was an elf running wildly. The rich green cloak on his body made him almost perfectly invisible in the dark woodland. However, the pursuers behind him could always find his direction. Gretel looked in the direction of the pursuers and couldn't help but frowned. Those were some humans, some human knights. The leader, holding a long sword with white light in his hand, ran quickly through the dense jungle, as if walking on flat ground. Whenever he loses direction, the long sword will vibrate slightly to guide him to the target he is following. Through the big bird's eyes, Gretel could see a trace of bright red wrapped around the sword in the white light. That elf was injured. Behind the swordsman who led the pursuit, there were about 10 human warriors forming a formation, chasing after them. They were obviously the swordsman's subordinates. This powerful pursuit power made the elf dare not stop for a moment. He kept disappearing into the tree trunk and reappearing in the distance, and in response, the human swordsman kept slashing through the tree trunk with his sword. The screams of the trees and the moans of the forest make nature's anger continue to accumulate. It's a pity that the elves running in front are not strong enough to arouse this angry power and fight back. The battle at Sisoyan began in the evening. Facing the enemy alone, he was extremely cautious and did not attack the opponent's warrior first. Instead, he concentrated his power on the grass outside the village, urging the grass blades to grow slowly. The mules and horses neighed softly. The mules and horses who unbridled and unloaded their camels were instinctively attracted to the grass blades spawned by the elves and wanted to come over and take a bite. Before they could move, the grass blades suddenly grew rapidly, their edges became zigzag, and they shone with sharp light. All the bridles and girdles on the mules and horses, or piled on the ground, were cut into short pieces one by one, and fell to the ground without strength. If you have the ability, just carry it yourself, Sisoyan whispered softly in the shadow of the woods. Without these fixtures, let me see what you use to transport goods. If you have the ability, carry it yourself. Carrying these heavy things out of the rainforest will take at least twice as long. Let's play slowly. From beginning to end, the knights were laughing and making noise in the village, and no one noticed what was happening outside the village. Even the warriors who were not qualified to enter the village, few came close to the mules and horses. Taking care of livestock is what slaves do, isn't it? And every slave, those with sallow skin, skinny skin, and no sparkle in their eyes, just watched numbly. No matter what happens, they just watch. Nature's favorite means much more than that. A breeze blew by, causing fine grass seeds to float and fall down. The moss grew rapidly, and soon, the food bags and water bags carried by the enemy were covered with large areas of dark green. Enemy attack. At this time, a loud roar sounded in the village. A few knights who were not playing rushed out, and what greeted them was the longbow drawn by the elf expressionlessly. The staff in the elf's hand naturally extended and bent, turning into a bow. With a backhand touch, he took out a bright silver bowstring from his cloak and hung it on both ends of the long bow. Turning his hands again, a handful of finely divided seeds were sandwiched between his fingers, two of which grew and elongated on their own. The front end condensed into sharp thorns, while the rear end spread out long, thin, arrow-like tail feathers. Whoosh! A pair of arrows accurately pierced the throats of the two knights. The elf glanced at it from a distance without any regret, then turned around and disappeared into the darkness. Immediately afterwards, the elusive god of death called his name, accompanied by the sound of bowstrings. Well. Puff, puff, puff. Ah! Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I don't know anything. The high-ranking knights in the village all looked ugly. The attacker did not rush into the village, but just killed them outside. In just a short while, the emerald green arrows had already claimed the lives of 7 or 8 warriors. His level is not high, he should only be at level 10. The colonel listened to the sound of the string several times and came to a conclusion with certainty. He drew his sword and stood up. Leave half of the knights to gather the team and maintain order. The other half, follow me. The knights rushed out in formation. After a while, more screams rang out from the village behind. The sharp arrows in the darkness changed directions every time, appearing and disappearing. Damn it! After 2 more screams, the colonel became furious. He waved his sword and pointed in the direction where the scouting knights were coming. Let's go. Let's kill all those natives. Colonel. Walk. In the darkness, the figure of the elf finally appeared in their direction. The long bow in his hand turned into a short bow, trembling and shooting. However, relying solely on archery could not stop the high-level knights. Sisoyan was soon injured and began to be chased. Someone is being hunted. Gretel woke up suddenly. He held the oak staff in his arms, still immersed in the anger of the forest and nature, and spoke in a fiery tone. An elf is being hunted. What? What? Cyrilla and Ashmoonsong looked back together. Gretel stood up unsteadily, and subconsciously slapped his arms. The natural force around him couldn't be shaken. It's over there. Sister Uge, I saw it during meditation, it's over there. He raised his arms and pointed firmly to the southeast. Ashuej glanced at him hesitantly, stood on tiptoes, and placed both palms against the giant tree in front of her. It's not that I don't believe Gretel. However, meditators often see scenes from long ago in their natural memories. And an unskilled meditator can easily regard these scenes as just happening. The giant tree quickly responded to her. The spiritual power of the Master Forest Guard continued to extend and extend with the help of the giant tree. 100 meters, 200 meters, 1 mile, 2 miles, 10 miles, 50 miles. Tell me, what happened in that direction, in the forest far away? Tell me, are any of our compatriots fighting or injured in that direction? Tell me, is there an angry forest in that direction? Ashmoonsong asked eagerly. And nature fully responded to her. Within 200 meters, trees, shrubs, mushrooms on the ground, and orchids on the trees all answered her questions. A mile away, only the trees responded to her inquiry. 50 miles away, only the most powerful and oldest ancient trees that have grown into magic plants can rely on the resonance of the forest to send her a response. No. No. We don't have it here either. However, far away, the wind brought the breath of nature, the forest was boiling, and nature was angry. That is a very, very far place, I don't know where it is, but that is not the place where my seeds have ever blown. AI-11 Uge silently let go of his hand. When he looked at Gretel again, his eyes had completely changed. Even if she is awake, she has no way to get the exact news from such a distant place through communication with nature. And Gretel just happened to meditate against the ancient tree. During his meditation, did he actually see? Did you really see it? Yes, Gretel nodded vigorously, his face full of certainty. A big monster bird allows me to share its vision, and I can see it clearly. Ashu-Isang was silent for a moment. Then, she turned to everyone and spoke firmly. Let's keep going. We're going all night? In that direction, far away, our compatriots are fighting, fleeing, and injured. Please everyone. With a crash, Mr. Hawthorne removed the pot, shoveled up the dirt and put out the bonfire. Appa shook his body and transformed into a huge white deer carrying at least 3 people. Cyrilla is eager to try. Do you want me? Gretel, do you want me to transform into a dragon and fly around with you? Gretel looked left and right. He untied his backpack and silently took out the ancient vine bird given by Elder Tapros. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. On the first day of the month, give me your guaranteed monthly pass as soon as possible. Thanks to @bookfriend 202009172156148887 for the reward of 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1068. Sisoyan was running as hard as he could. The leading human warrior was so annoying. He threatened himself with innocent indigenous villagers, and without hesitation he raised his sword and headed in that direction, his body full of murderous intent. If left alone, he could really kill all those villagers. A group of civilians, only 2 low-level warriors, no spellcasters, no powerful monsters, such a combination, the leading human warrior went over with a sword and killed them all in just a few blinks. If he had just stood by and watched, Sisoyan could have laid an ambush in the jungle for dozens of days and slowly killed these people. As a jungle master, even if his frontal combat effectiveness is not as good as that of the human warrior, he still has countless ways to attack them. Drive away poisonous insects, drive away poisonous snakes, throw moss into their drinking water, spawn poisonous mushrooms where they look for food. 1 month, as long as he is given 1 month, he can make the bones of these people rot in the embrace of the jungle. But Sisoyan couldn't stand by and watch the villagers being killed. Even if they are just indigenous villagers, even if they are only humans, they are still his friends and comrades in arms. They trust him and rely on him. Generation after generation, several generations, he watched them grow up, watch them get married, watch them have children, and then watch the new generation of children grow up. When he was patrolling the jungle, he stopped in their village, took the water bowl from the hands of their women, combed their children's braids, and braided golden hard fruits into the ends of the braids. Those children learned to fight from him, learn medicine from him, learn from him how to listen to the sounds of nature, how to live in harmony with animals and plants. Watch them all being killed? Sisoyan would rather stand up for himself. Stand up, stand on the edge of the blade, and distract the most powerful enemy. Run. Run. He clutched the injury and ran with a limp. That human warrior was so powerful that even though he was 2 trees away, the sword light stretched over and cut him with 1 strike. If he hadn't escaped quickly, his left leg might have been severed. Sisoyan narrowly avoided it at the last moment. I performed a treatment on my leg and managed to stop the bleeding, but my left leg could no longer exert its strength. He had no choice but to call on nature to cover him as he jumped from tree to tree. Behind him, the rumble of a big tree falling down made his heart bleed again and again. Gritting his teeth, he turned around and shot an arrow. 2 arrows whizzed, and an enemy fell down screaming. After only such a delay, the human swordsman suddenly fired, closing the distance. Sithawen's short bow vibrated and fired 3 arrows in succession, hitting his throat, chest, and side ribs. The swordsman chopped off 2 arrows, sighted to avoid one, and suddenly a red light shot out from the badge on his chest. Sisoyan tried his best to dodge, but was still hit by the red light on the outside of his right arm. This time, unable to draw his bow, he had no choice but to run as fast as he could, and run as hard as he could. While escaping, he tried his best to communicate with the surrounding forest. "Help me! Protect me! Stop them! Trip them! These humans are the enemies of nature." Along the way, snakes and insects scurry around, night birds fly in fright, and big trees fall down one by one. When he ran to exhaustion, a wild boar suddenly jumped out of its thorns, lowered its head and dug into Sisuyan's body. Without any explanation, he put him on his back and ran down the mountain with a rumble. Sisuyan lay on the back of the boar, panting, lowering his body as much as possible, and wrapping himself tightly in the cloak. Sure enough, the wild boar snorted and burrowed into the low bushes. The pig's back was covered with rosin gravel and hard bristles, and it was definitely not comfortable to lie down on. The bush tried its best to lift its branches, but there were still hard branches that could not be avoided, and they hit the back one by one, causing burning pain. However, it was his friends who were doing their best to protect him. Sisuyan tried to breathe evenly, tried to regain a little strength, and listened carefully to the movement behind. At $%. Behind him, the pursuing human swordsman cursed, and his way was obviously blocked by the bushes. With the sword wind whistling, he began to cut down the huge bush, cursing while cutting. It was obvious that the bush was attacking them in every possible way. Float leaves, shoot thorns, spray stink, encourage bugs to attack your face. Everything was done to buy him a little time. Sisuyan held back tears, took out a large ball of green mud from his backpack, and patted it on his legs and arms. A burst of refreshing coolness immediately stopped the pain in the wound on the leg, but the arm was still burning. "What is that red light? What is it?" Alas, why didn't he work hard to practice martial arts and spells when he was on Elf Island? Why has he been guarding this forest for so many years and always feels that time is still very long? He spends too much time growing flowers, growing medicine, brewing elven wine, and communicating with the surrounding animals. If only he could defeat that human warrior. Even if he is a little stronger. Be stronger. Another sword wind passed by. Suddenly, Sisuyan was lifted up heavily, fell to the ground, and rolled down the hillside. The wild boar carrying him, carrying its thick skin covered with rosin and covered with sand and gravel, turned around and charged straight towards the pursuers. There was a curse and the sound of a long sword tearing through the night wind. The hot smell of blood was soon carried to the tip of his nose by the night wind in the rainforest. Sisuyan gritted his teeth, held back a lot of tears, got up and continued running. Run, run. Run. You have to run until your legs are broken, you have to run until your lungs explode, you have to run until your blood dries up. The further you run, the greater your chances of escaping. The farther you run, the greater the chance that the indigenous village will be safe. After running another 10 miles, there is a demon crocodile ahead, who may be able to join forces with him to fight against the enemy. After running another 20 miles, there is a pair of fire-feathered cranes living there. Even if they are unwilling to participate in the battle, maybe they are willing to carry him out of danger? Although he has never defeated the male crane. Run, run, fall down, roll out along the hillside, get up and run again, run, run, hide in the tree trunk, move for a while, rush out and run again. Run until you see stars in front of your eyes, run until your physical strength is exhausted, grit your teeth, and push forward for a while. Stop. You can't run away. It's an elf. Ha 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 ha, it's actually a legendary elf. Look at those pointed ears. Boss, catch them alive. I haven't tasted the taste of elves yet. Idiot. How can I waste it for you? If it is really an elf, of course it must be delivered to the hands of a big shot. If the governor, or even His Majesty the King, Gets this elf, we won't have to work here to deliver it as soon as he is happy. La. But he is a man. Are you an idiot? When did the drinks on Tulip Street become cheaper than those on Rose Street? Laughter, shouts, and all kinds of obscene words came splashing from behind. Silently, Siswayan fumbled with his belt and held the dagger tightly under his cloak. If he really cannot escape, he must not fall into the hands of these people. It's just a matter of reintegrating into nature. The footsteps became heavier and heavier, and the laughter and curses behind him got closer and closer. There was a sudden sound of strings, and before Sisuian could dodge, his left back shoulder felt cold. What followed was not a burning pain, but a heavy numbness. Sisuian was hit by the arrow and fell down. His heart felt cold, and he no longer struggled to get up, but resolutely pulled out the dagger. He closed his eyes, his pointed ears trembled slightly, and he murmured lowly, "Mother!" Ah! A scream. Sisuian's arm trembled. The dagger flicked, and instead of stabbing straight into the heart, it made a gash in the side. He didn't even have time to apply the healing technique to himself. He propped his left arm on the ground and tried his best to turn his head and look. Nothing can be seen. Nothing can be seen. As far as the eye can see, there is a black hole, blocking all his sight. Sisuian tentatively summoned a bright light spell and shined it around. He saw a large snow-white bowl, tipped upside down to the ground, and he was trapped inside. Buckle it inside. Buckle it inside. Reaching out and getting closer, it was very cold, 10 times colder than an ordinary ice wall. At the last moment before pressing it, an idea flashed in Sisuian's mind and he suddenly retracted his hand. Okay, if you don't hold back, you'll be frozen on the ice wall. He slowly took out half a pack of green mud and applied it to the wound little by little. Turn your cheek, put your long pointed ears to the ground, and listen hard. What's going on outside? Did someone come to save him? Or are there some monsters that they don't like and rush over to fight them? Is he safe now? In addition to the ice wall technique, the knights in the governor's palace of Pelu looked up and felt that half of the sky was dark. Even in the middle of the night, they could see what a behemoth was pressing above their heads. The body alone is as big and as high as a room, the wings spread out on both sides are at least as wide as 5 or 6 rooms on each side, a slight flap will bring up a strong wind that makes them unable to stand. What's this? Is it some super-level monster? Come on, Colonel, let's run. Run, the giant bird suddenly lowered its head. The bird's beak is open, and looking inward from the bird's beak, a hole as big as the mouth of a bowl can be seen. A face popped out of the hole, with a pair of dark eyes full of anger. Can you guys run away? Crack. A bolt of bright lightning shot out from the bird's beak and shot straight down through the sky. Not allowing anyone to react, he struck the colonel in the blink of an eye. The colonel fell without a word. The lightning then split on the spot, with 6 branches, and jumped to the following knights, naming each of them. Serial lightning. The farthest high-ranking knight who was not named turned pale and immediately turned around and ran back. After all, the colonel is also a level 13 knight. If he is hit by a chain of lightning, he will not fall down immediately. Who is this person? Who is it? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. September 1st, please give me a guaranteed monthly ticket. I'm crying, I was ranked 8th on the fantasy monthly ticket list at the end of last month, why am I only ranked 15th now? Thanks to @bookfriend 20210929171932392 for the 500 starting coin reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1069. Gretel drove the ancient vine giant bird, galloping thousands of miles, riding the wind. This is of course impossible. With Gretel's mental power and magic power, it is relatively easy to control a bird in its initial form to fly for dozens of miles. If the direction is specified and there is someone to receive it at the destination, it can also fly for hundreds of miles. It is not difficult to control an ancient vine bird pretending to be one or at most two people, fly through the clouds and fog at full speed, and fly for about 100 miles. In fact, this is what Elder Tapros meant when he presented this little bird. Flying for about 100 miles is enough for a magician to prepare more ways to adapt and escape from danger easily. As for controlling a giant ancient vine bird that holds 7 or 8 people, and fly hundreds of miles in one breath, let's wait until Gretel is above level 13, or even above level 15. What's more, he doesn't need to control it himself. A group of people filed into the bird's belly, and Cyrilla was the first to jump over, excitedly holding a protruding energy supply center on the sternum wall of the giant bird. "I'm coming. I'm coming, I'm coming. Gretel, point me in the direction." "Okay." The canes rise quietly and intertwine into two driver's seats side by side. Greet took a seat on the right, raised his head slightly and leaned on the back of the chair, closing his eyes. "Close the hatch, raise the seats, secure everyone, yes, secure Appa as well, don't think you can just hold it, lift off, turn." The mountain breeze rustles and the wooden leaves rustle. Lin Chao rolled under his feet. Greet sat in the cockpit, eyes slightly closed, and his mental energy expanded like water, resonating with the surrounding nature. "Show me the way, show me the direction of the boiling forest, the direction of nature's anger, the direction of nature's darling, the direction of blood dripping." After using it in this way, I realized that the ancient vine bird given by Elder Tapros was really magical. The mental power comes out of the bird and resonates with the surrounding nature. Not only does it not feel strenuous, it is actually strengthened. It seems that every rattan woven into the bird's body is a living thing, absorbing the power of nature on its own. When your spiritual power comes out, they will naturally resonate, help you, and extend in all directions. Forward. Greet raised his hand slightly, and a silent phantom naturally appeared in front of him on the left and on Cyrira's right. Colorful light overflows, outlining the forests, rivers, and lakes below. The hills are undulating, the giant trees are towering, the creek falls gently, and the lake silently reflects the bright moon. Although it was night, the terrain below was clearly depicted by the silent phantom. And in the center of this phantom, there is a small, chubby red bird suspended. The beak, head, wings, and body of the bird are detailed and micro, and the direction of flight can be clearly seen. "Huh!" Cyrira instantly stuck her head out, her eyes full of surprise. She still held her hands on the power supply center, her palms glowing slightly, and the bird in the silent phantom turned a corner according to her thoughts. "It's turning. It's turning. Gretel, look, our direction can be marked on this map." A shout alerted all the passengers in the bird's belly. Bernard and Mr. Hawthorne put their heads together, pursed their lips, and mouthed "whoa" at about the same time. Ms. Jasmine opened her eyes slightly, unable to conceal her surprise. From the moment she entered the bird's belly to now, she has also been communicating with nature subconsciously. However, the area displayed by the silent phantom is more than 10 times larger than the range she can communicate with. Ash Moonsong sighed and let go of the armrest of the seat. Although there are many treasures soaked in the power of nature on Yangju Island, they are not something that ordinary elves like her can obtain. Only elders can make such treasures, and they can only be cultivated if they are kept by their side for a long time. Those young elves who come from the royal family can get 1 or 2 pieces to protect themselves. It would be great if you can touch it. Moreover,
when she left Yangju Island to travel the mainland, she was not much stronger than little Gretel is now. It was in the process of traveling through mountains and rivers, forests, grasslands, deserts, and snowy fields that I advanced again and again. It was in the process of protecting the rich forest that I became as strong as I am today. Even if such a good thing was given to her, she couldn't protect it. Not everyone is the youngest son of the god of thunder, a promising plague lord, and has an adult silver dragon by his side. And to be honest, you have to do two things like Gretel, communicating naturally and controlling silent phantom. Continuously communicate, constantly adjust, and constantly indicate direction. Even now she can't do it. Well. Amid everyone's surprised gazes, Gretel opened his eyes slightly and smiled at the silver dragon girl. Calm your mind, a bright yellow line immediately stretched out from the silent phantom, straight forward. Cyrilla, you control the bird and fly in the direction of the yellow line. Aha! Cyrilla controls the giant ancient vine bird to turn left and right. After adjusting twice, she got the direction right, and the giant bird broke through the wind and galloped away. Greet sat in the driver's seat with his eyes closed and kept giving orders. Fly a little higher, fly a little higher, okay, that's it, hey, don't go higher. Lower, lower. No matter how high I am, I can't communicate with the people below. Okay, this height is just right. AI-11 UGE's eyes suddenly widened. The silent phantom controlled by Gretel is still changing, the giant trees are shrinking, the hills are shrinking, the lakes are shrinking. Just like looking down from a high altitude, the area that can be observed is naturally larger. The giant bird flew rapidly, heading southeast. Over forests, over swamps, over coasts. From beginning to end, I never got lost or wavered. 20 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles. 200 miles later, the giant ancient vine bird quietly adjusted its shape, its trunk narrowed, its wings elongated, and its entire body became closer to a streamlined shape. 300 miles later, mist gradually filled the air and clouds surrounded the giant ancient vine bird. 500 miles later, a pair of colorful birds flew up from the ancient trees below, with sparks twined on their wings, dancing gracefully in front of the giant ancient vine birds. Greet still had his eyes closed, but his eyebrows moved slightly and he nodded slightly. That's it, I know, it's this direction, I'll go there right away. The yellow line in the silent phantom stretched, stretched, stretched again. The little red bird in the phantom adjusted its direction and landed exactly on the yellow line. Lin Tao was furious under the bird's belly. After an unknown amount of time, Greet jumped up. Found it? The group of people who were chasing the elves have been found. Beat you to death. Arcane missiles. Ice wall technique. The first spell is cast instantly, blocking the closest pursuing swordsman and forcing him to return his sword to protect himself. The second spell fell upside down to protect the fallen elf. With the bonus of liquid nitrogen, even a level 13 swordsman cannot break the ice wall in an instant. As for the third spell. Greet closed his eyes slightly and stretched out his hand to the side in the void. This ancient vine bird is his space equipment, and it will naturally send him the objects he wants according to his wishes. As soon as he stretched out his hand, a metal treasure box appeared silently in his hand. The lid of the box was opened, and 6 test tubes placed side by side appeared in the snow-white cold mist. The water inside was glistening, and in a thin tube less than 5 millimeters in diameter, half a finger's worth of liquid was soaked in a thin metal wire. With a soft click, the leftmost one automatically popped out and fell into Greet's palm. Greet held the test tube weakly, already feeling the cold air rushing out, making his palm slightly numb from the cold. He didn't care, he cleared his mind and activated the spell model he had just practiced. Serial lightning. Crack. The bright electric light shot through the sky. The power of the 6th level spell,
chain lightning, was directly pushed to the 7th level by the superconducting suit. The leading swordsman was only level 13. He received this blow from the front and fell to the ground immediately. The body was stiff, the hands and feet were spasmodic, and for a while, it was impossible to struggle at all. The arc of lightning jumped away from him, naming the knights behind him one by one. The arc distributed was only half as powerful as the first strike, but even this half was not something a level 9 or 10 knight could withstand. In an instant, there was a rumble on the ground and a group of people rolled down. Only the knight farthest away reacted quickly. He felt the strong wind above his head and immediately backed up. Fortunately, he was not hit by the arc. He didn't dare to scream, turned around and ran away. After escaping for a few steps, I subconsciously looked back, and instantly the souls of the dead appeared. The big bird did not continue to attack, but opened a door on its side, and several people jumped out one after another. Several. Many. Now, there are many people on the other side, and there is only one left. You can't beat them one-on-one, let alone there are several of them. The knight buried his head and continued to run. After running a few more steps, I couldn't help but look back. The one who jumped out first was still in human form when he jumped out of the bird's belly. As he jumped to the ground, his body continued to bend and stretch, and he had turned into a black bird. Leopard. The Black Panther landed heavily with a click. The fleeing knight clearly felt that he heard a crisp sound of bones breaking. No, more than one sound. Just where the Black Panther stepped down with his 4 claws, the colonel who was stepped on might have all his limbs broken. What about me? What about me? The Black Panther raised his head and roared lowly, as if thunder was rumbling in his throat and chest. It didn't even look at the soldiers who were lying on the ground. It lowered its limbs, suddenly jumped up, and rushed towards them. Don't chase me! The fleeing knight shouted. He tremblingly pulled out a dagger from his waist, clenched his hands, and raised it high. The dagger was made entirely of pure silver and was inlaid with 7 or 8 large and small gemstones, ranging from the size of a fingernail to the size of a grain of rice. The precious light flows and condenses into a white light at the tip, hesitating. The knight turned the dagger upside down in both hands and pointed it at his chest. I am. With a loud bang, Black Panther pounced on him, threw him to the ground, and hit the back of his head on the ground. As for the dagger, it sank deeply into his chest on the spot, causing blood to flow out. What this knight is, it seems that no one knows anymore. However, the next moment, the dagger rose on its own, and a white light burst out from the blade, cutting through the sky and falling straight down. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks at Yuhua Dengxian 233 for the 100 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1070. A sudden change occurred. The white light reaches the ground and reaches the sky, drawing a line and cutting through the night. It goes up to the top of the forest and down to the deep valley. The ancient vine giant bird, Gretel among the giant birds, and Ash Moonsong, Cyrilla, Bernard, the hawthorn couple and Apia who jumped out of the giant bird one after another. As well as Sisuyan who was protected by the ice wall, everyone, was shrouded under the white light blade. Everyone, even Sisuyan, who was lying in the ice wall and couldn't see anything outside, breathed hard and his hair stood on end. What happened? What happened? Aiziwaj roared and rushed forward without thinking. The Black Panther's strong muscles bulged, its hair stood up, and even its tail was stretched straight. The steel-like claws stood in front, grabbing the dagger. She didn't consider how strong this enemy was, nor how powerful this attack was. As for whether she could take this blow, the elf forest guard did not consider it. Ash Moonsong only knew that Gretel was a cub and Cyrilla was a young silver dragon. As for the Jasmine couple, Bernard and Apa, they were all much weaker than themselves. There are dangers and enemies, so of course you have to be at the front. She rushed quickly, and Sarala did her part. The silver dragon girl unfolded her figure in the air without even thinking about it. The light rose and shrank, and a huge silver dragon appeared in the area. The figure is so huge that it even lifts the little bird on the ancient vine. She flapped her wings and took a deep, deep breath. Bernard. Mr. Hawthorne. Ms. Jasmine. Appa, who turned into the size of a young deer, was held in the hands of the barbarians and jumped down. We can't see anything. Nothing can be seen. The situation ahead, how strong the attack is, in what direction it is coming, how wide the coverage is, where should we dodge? Not even a bit can be seen. All of them were blocked by Sarala. Miss Silver Dragon, thank you for your kindness, but we also want to help, at least, we don't want to be a hindrance. 3 people and a deer fell down one after another. Bernard's whole body tensed up and he squinted his eyes, trying hard to see clearly the intensity of the white light at the moment when the silver dragon retracted its wings. Ms. Jasmine quickly touched it with her left hand, and caught a handful of seeds between her fingers. The right hand flies, the 5 fingers open and close like flowers, close and open again. Race against time to add armor to several people around you. Even if it's just the lowest level of armor, it's better than having nothing at all. Mr. Hawthorne clenched the weapon in his hand with a cold expression. Holding a shield in his left hand and a sword in his right hand, he was ready to fight at any time. At the same time, he stared directly below, staring at the enemies who were named by the lightning chain and collapsed on the ground. Throw away the prisoners. He shouted at the top of his lungs. What are you going to do on your own? Throw away the prisoners. Throw the prisoners up as human shields. That white light, that sharp white light, you can tell at a glance that it was inspired by something fixed, maybe the blood or life of that person. It is impossible for this kind of thing to switch from attack mode to treatment mode immediately. Throw it away. Throw their bodies up, okay, block the wave first. Ms. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. She pointed down, and the weeds on the ground grew spontaneously without any wind. Hundreds of trees in a bunch, hundreds of trees in a bunch, like pairs of green arms, grabbing those who fell on the ground and could not move. Throw. No, that's too difficult for weeds. Weeds don't have this power. So, the bush on the side, please bend down. So many actions, it only takes a moment to speak of them. The dagger floats up, points to the sky, turns, and falls with white light. Ashmoon Song pounced. Sarala transformed, spread her wings, and breathed out. Mr. Hawthorne and others deal with it individually. Greet, who was standing in the giant ancient vine bird, quickly slid down and shrank into the driver's seat. Holding the energy supply core with both hands, his eyes were sharp. Warriors have a warrior's way of coping, and mages have a mage's way of coping. The idea of a warrior is to rush forward with all his strength and protect the most people. The mage's idea is to use magic equipment, and use everything at hand. Shrink. He gave the order to Gu Teng Xiaotiao in his mind. The giant ancient vine bird shrank rapidly, becoming 10 meters long, 5 meters long, 2 meters long. Finally, it shrank into an ancient vine armor and wrapped tightly around him. Cast a spell. Greet gave the second order. The ancient vine bird soaked in the power of nature is like an oak staff magnified 1,000 times. It amplifies his spells according to his thoughts. Ray deflection shield. Elemental shield. Protect from energy damage. Force shield. Ray deflection shield, deflection shield, deflection shield, deflection shield. Layers of armor were put on Ashu Isong's body layer upon layer. Especially those deflection shields, one layer to the left, one layer to the right, another layer to the left, and another layer to the right. Each one is placed diagonally on top of each other, looking like several layers of fish scale tiles on the roof. I'll let you kill me. I'll let you kill it. The arc that can be separated by the chain of lightning can knock down a warrior with one blow, and it will only be level 9 or 10 if it is sustained to death. What a person like this can take out must be level 15 at most, right? Okay, be lenient if you predict the enemy, 16. 17. I can't believe that with so many layers of protection stacked up on top of each other, you still have the ability to cut through it with one strike. He was stacking armor, and Cyrilla was stacking armor too. The huge silver dragon lowered his head and looked at the Black Panther. Instead of attacking vigorously, he paused for a moment. At this moment of pause, the ice breath she had just sprayed began to change quietly. Layer after layer, layer after layer, they condense into ice flakes like fish scales in the air. Crystal clear and smooth as a mirror. I tell you to shine. I tell you to shine white. If you have the ability, you can cut one piece, then another piece, and 70 or 80 layers. It depends on whether you have more white light or my breath. The dagger rotated and slashed downward. The sharp white light turned 45 degrees, passed near Gretel's ancient vine armor, and continued to fall. Hit the first ice crystal and break it, hit the second ice crystal and break it again. Break. Refraction. Scattering. The main part continues to be broken. Another small part is refracted. Another small part is scattered. In a moment, a colorful rainbow rose up from Cyrilla's ice breath. No matter how powerful the white light was, more than half of it had disappeared after being weakened by layers of ice. By the time she turned 90 degrees to be parallel to the ground and pointing forward, Ms. Jasmine had completed her work. Bang. 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 Human bodies were lifted high by thousands of weeds, and their branches were bent by shrubs, and they bounced into the air with all their strength. In his busy schedule, Gretel even whipped up a whirlwind and arranged a position for them. Make sure that the white light can accurately cut through one body, and another body. Blood rained everywhere, and the ground was full of fishy stench. When the white light fell on the ice wall, it was weakened by more than 30%. At this time, Sisuian, who was firmly protected by the inverted bowl-shaped ice wall, had already rolled hard and shrunk to the base of the wall. Although he didn't know what the use of it was, and he didn't know if it would roll directly under the attack instead. Although, he didn't know that it was cold outside and the ice walls were stacked layer by layer. However, people always have to do their best for their own survival, right? Ice walls cascade and white light shoots. At this time, Ashu Isang, who was heavily protected, was already wearing a variety of armors and pounced on with all his strength. Flutter. Throw down that dagger. Turn it at an angle, press it down, and press it into the soil. Make it unable to hit anyone. The Black Panther's sharp nails all popped out, and there was no metallic luster at the tip. Instead, there was a dark, ebony-like light. This was the tip of the spear that Ashu Isang had carried with her for many years, giving the nails a powerful attack power. Behind the nails are strong and powerful leopard claws. Even if they are not strengthened by natural magic, they can break the neck of a wild deer or push a crocodile into the soil with a circular swing. Now, with such a pair of sharp claws, they struck with the strongest force and actually drove the dagger into the soil. AI-11 UGE did not dare to neglect, and held on tightly. The muscles on her shoulders and back stood up, and she let out a low roar. Ouch! Stop it! Stop! No more flying! If you fly again, I will break you. Sister UGE, get out of the way. Above the head, Cyrilla shouted loudly, which was suppressed by the heavy sound of wind. Ashu Edge rolled to the side involuntarily, and saw a dragon claw passing over her and pressing hard into the soil. Immediately afterwards, The giant dragon inhaled and exhaled. A frost-white cold current instantly wrapped the dagger in layers, freezing it into an ice ball half as tall as a man. Cyrilla screamed in joy, threw herself on the ice puck, and began to click and process. Mine. This dagger is mine. Auntie, no one said this is not yours, besides, your eyes are too quick. Others are only busy fighting the enemy. If you say it, you can probably see the gem on the dagger. After finishing half a circle, AI-11UGE stood up from the ground, smiling bitterly. Looking around, all the prisoners, except for the one she knocked down, had been cut in half by the dagger. As for the one under her claws, it had a dagger in its chest. When it flew up on its own, it borrowed some strength, was pressed down by her four claws, and was slightly scratched by her ice breath. All in all, it's hard to live without seeing it. Ash Moonsong didn't care whether the prisoner lived or not. She raised her head and saw Gretel slowly floating down, and quickly waved to him. Come here. Come here. Release the ice wall and see how our compatriots are doing. Gretel, don't shout so fiercely. After cancelling the feather falling technique, the speed of falling directly is only a second or two faster than the speed of floating down. As he drifted, he looked back. Cyrilla grabbed the ice ball and kept trimming it. The half-human high ice ball had been trimmed to the size of a watermelon. In the ice ball, the dagger was quiet, as if the previous blow had completely drained away the power inside. Thousands of miles away in the governor's palace of Pelu, a swordsman with white teeth and red lips, who was so handsome that he was almost enchanting, let out a sigh and raised his head towards the far north. The brand on my dagger was touched. The transport team, something must have happened. Grown-ups. Please give me monthly votes, recommend votes, book reviews, and all kinds of things. Is there anyone who has a guaranteed monthly ticket and hasn't voted yet? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1071. Sisoyan. Why are you injured like this? Wake up. Hold on. The ice wall spell was cancelled, and Ashu Isong was the first to pounce in. He lowered his head and saw the middle-aged elf lying on the side covered in blood, and immediately applied the healing technique. With a soft groan, Sisuian moved and slowly opened his eyes. Gretel? Aren't you going to go? A few dozen steps away, Cyrilla was playing with the ice ball that had been shaved to the size of a cantaloupe, while looking at Gretel curiously. Gretel squatted on the edge, turned on detection magic, and was playing with the cut ice cubes one by one. This one is okay, this one is okay, this one is okay, this one is not okay, this one is too light. Hey, I don't know if it can be made into distilled water with the holy power of the Lord of Glory. Store them in water, I want to use them to make saline solution. Shameful waste. Even if it is the holy power of the Lord of Glory, it is still holy power. It's also great for washing wounds and preventing infection. Cyrilla pouted and nudged him gently with her elbow. Miss Silver Dragon's light touch caused Gretel to fall at a 45-degree angle on the spot. If he hadn't reacted quickly and used magic to hold him up, he would have almost fallen to the ground on the spot. Wait for her to call someone, I will go over now, in case the injured person becomes unconscious. It was the elves who were injured, and it was humans who launched the attack. If an elf who had just been attacked by a human and fell to the ground with serious injuries saw him coming and reflexively attacked him to protect himself, who would be responsible if he was hit? There is no place to complain. So Gretel acted very resolutely and decisively. Although he had his ears pricked up and was ready to throw a healing spell at any time, he was standing dozens of meters away. Anyway, with Ashu Isong's level and healing ability, it is still possible to control vital signs in a short period of time. If she doesn't call someone, I won't go there. Gretel, come here quickly. Coming. Gretel threw away the ice chips in his hand and hurried over. Sarala also followed over, leaned next to her, and asked questions. Sister Uge, who is this elf? Do you know him? He is Siswayan Silva, a warrior of the Yuanfeng family, the guardian of this forest. Do you know him? Of course, I just left Yangju Island, and when I went out to travel, I received his guidance. We often wrote letters. The person I wrote to inquire about Jasmine's father last time thought that he was there. He is the only one. Eh? Sister Uge, do you have messengers running around on the mainland? There is no need for a special person to deliver the message. Every elf is a child of nature. The grebes and trogons at close range, and the swifts, terns, and albatross at a distance are all good helpers for us to send messages. It is very convenient. Wow, this is really good. Sister Uge, teach me. No, teach Gretel. Anyway, he is also a natural priest. If he learns this trick, it will be more convenient for him to write letters to the teacher. Ah, what I said is his teacher from the order of the God of Nature. Let him learn, why not let you learn? The elf and the silver dragon were whispering on the side. On the other side, Gretel stood in front of Sisuian, taking 3 steps at a time. His brows immediately frowned. Shortness of breath. Rapid heartbeat. Vital signs are weak. He moved his fingers and hung up the electrocardiogram and blood pressure routine kits first. Well, the heartbeat is 110, the blood pressure is 80/40ths, the respiration is 32, the skin color has become so smeared that it can't be seen. I need to cleanse it first. Okay, my face is pale, my lips and nails are pale. How much blood has I lost? How many blood types do elves have? Do Ash Moonsong and this male elf have the same blood type? Can we give each other blood transfusions? Can half-elves give blood to elves? Greet quickly checked his body surface and saw no obvious bleeding points. I took off my clothes and did a B ultrasound scan. There was no large amount of fluid in the chest or lungs, and there should be no large amount of internal bleeding. The abdominal cavity. You, who are you, what are you doing? Sisoyan lay there languidly, eyes closed, letting him do whatever he wanted. Before he came over, Ashu Isong had already informed him quickly. Gretel has half the blood of our tribe. Although he is a cub and only level 11, his healing skills are better than mine. Just bear with me and I'll ask him to help you heal. With these words as a foundation, Sisoyan could not struggle or resist, and let Gretel do his work. However, after waiting and waiting, subtle spell fluctuations passed over the body surface again and again, but there was no feeling of being treated. Even with Ashu Edge as a guarantee, he couldn't help but ask. Do not talk. Greet interrupted softly, take a deep breath. Bulb your belly. Relax. Lie on the left side, okay, keep it, turn over, lie on the right side. Tisk, there is fluid in the abdominal cavity, and there is quite a lot of it. Gretel lowered his head, his fingertips flashed, and he used cleaning techniques, iodine cotton, local anesthesia, scalpels, and vines to press down on Sisoy's abdomen one by one. Blood. Gretel, you drew blood from his stomach. He has internal bleeding, and there's a lot of it. Gretel stared at the red liquid emerging from the vines, quickly took a drainage bottle underneath, and stuffed it into Ashu Isong. Hold it, keep it at this height and don't move. The floating saucer was stuffed under Sisuian's body, lifted him up quietly, and floated to the side. Floating to a slightly flat location, Cyrilla had already rushed over, her fingertips flashing. Asylum Hut operating room version, open up. Operating table. Shadowless lamp. Wash basin. Opaque wall. Don't you all come in, Cyrilla shouted. They are all watching from the outside. Gretel is performing an operation, and the most taboo thing about the pollution in the operating room is, you are not allowed to enter this door. After saying that, he jumped in and slammed the door. The inner room of the mage's hut automatically closes and merges with the surrounding opaque force field walls. Brushing, scrubbing, cleaning the whole body, washing hands, changing into surgical clothes, and going in to help. Hey, Cyrilla is the strongest nurse. You can enter the operating room at any time. Gretel had just finished her work, getting dressed, putting on a surgical cap, brushing her hands, and showed her a grateful smile. Arriving in front of the operating table in 3 steps and 2 steps at a time, Sarah had already fluttered her hands and cast a series of spells on Sisuian. Sleep technique. Tranquility. Cold and heat resistant. Don't use tranquility, just sleep. If he vomits, tranquility may cause aspiration. Gretel stared at the life monitoring spell and gave orders without raising his head. But he hurts. Use local anesthesia. If deep surgery is needed, I will do it. Okay. Sarah raised her hand. The next moment, Gretel saw patches of local anesthesia falling like snowflakes. According to his visual inspection, it almost covered the whole body of the elf. Gretel, well, it doesn't have to be like this. Okay, Cyrilla, I'll do it. Gretel motioned for her to step aside a little, flew out 2 powerful mage hands, and picked up the sleeping elf upright. Throw out the high-level magic crystal given by the teacher. Detect magic, activate. Let's do a CT scan first. Communication meditation core, give me full speed calculation. When the person completes a circle, the results will come out and indicate to me the location of the problem. Outside the operating room, Ashu Edge and Ms. Jasmine stood side by side, staring at the disappeared door without blinking. Ashu Isong raised her arm, lowered it, raised it again, and lowered it again, clenched it into a fist, raised it up, lowered it again, clenched it into a fist again. What is Gretel doing? Why did he drive us all out? Sisuian was seriously injured. Do you want to break down the door and get in? Forget it, I can't beat you. The elf lady and the half-elf lady didn't know that when they rushed in, Cyrilla might not have time to hit anyone. At this moment, she was being driven around by Gretel. Has the normal saline been prepared? The temperature is 37 degrees. Are you sure? Okay, brachial vein puncture and infusion of normal saline. Pay attention to controlling the infusion speed, don't go too fast. Pay attention to the electrocardiogram and blood pressure monitor, and report the data every minute. Replace the drainage bottle regularly. Closed drainage, no air leakage. Tell me how much fluid you drain. While he was giving orders, his hands were flying, and 5 or 6 mage hands and 3 or 4 vines were working together. He who helps people, he who makes holes, and he who guides people drains water. At the same time, according to the guidance of the CT, a ball of healing technique was condensed and slowly sank into Sisuian's belly. This guy is really lucky. With such severe liver contusion and liver rupture, he actually managed to hold on until everyone arrived. It's okay, I'll be fine when I get there. If you can heal it with healing techniques, it will heal. If you can't heal it, the worst case is open surgery. I can bring you back no matter what. Well, there are CT imaging and X-rays, which are not much different from visual inspection, which facilitates the location of treatment. The liver treatment is completed. Spleen, pancreas, kidneys, intestines, stroke every blood vessel. Next came the injuries on the body surface, including an arrow wound on the left back shoulder, abrasions on the right arm, a sword wound on the left leg that obviously cut off a lot of muscles, and various scrapes and bumps on the body. It's a blessing that this guy didn't die. Gretel muttered quietly. Next to her, Cyrilla pushed a floating saucer over and placed it underneath to help Greet catch the blood. She nodded quickly. Yes, yes. Even though he was so far away, Gretel felt it and rushed over to save him. It's really a big deal. That's not what I'm talking about, Sarah, look, there are so many scratches on his body, all in the same direction. It's obvious that he rolled down the hillside, it's really not easy not to knock his head. Juan, no matter which stone you hit, you will get a concussion at the very least. Because nature is protecting me. On the operating table, a breathless voice spoke hoarsely. You're awake? Gretel and Sarah asked at the same time. Sisoyan smiled hard. You are using hypnosis, right? I am an elf, and my spell resistance is relatively strong. Gretel. Miscalculated, I'll have to use a more powerful spell next time. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thank you for the 100 starting coins I received when I lost contact in another world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1072. Technique. Awakening from surgery. Gretel's entire face turned dark. Where's the anesthesiologist? What does an anesthesiologist do? Oh, the anesthesiologist is myself, so that's okay. This has never happened before. In the past, local anesthesia and hypnosis was used for low-intensity surgeries, and tranquilization was used for high-intensity surgeries to ensure that the patient slept until the end of the operation, and would not wake up until the spell was lifted. Speaking of which, he has never independently performed an operation on a high-level mage. High-level knights, whose magic resistance is not that high, can be dealt with by using the tranquility spell. High-level mages are always accompanied by Archmage Bielsa or other high-level healing mages, and they can handle the anesthesia. So in the future, when performing surgery and administering anesthesia spells, the recipient's magic resistance must also be taken into consideration. Does this mean that I need to find a bunch of high-level mages for testing, or at worst, a bunch of high-level warcraft? All kinds of thoughts passed through Gretel's mind. Before she could clear her thoughts, Cyrilla had already walked up, eagerly raised her palms and looked at Greet. Do you want to knock him out? Sisoyan. Gretel. Do not. Bangma and all that, just for fun. You don't really want to go down with a stick. Ahem, how did you feel during the previous operation? Did it hurt? Gretel asked Sisoyan seriously. As he asked, he quickly used cleaning skills to clean the wounds on his body, and the mud on his body, and poured holy saline. It doesn't hurt, it's just a little weird. It seems like my stomach is being turned around by several hands. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God, it doesn't hurt, which is a good thing after all. After the debridement was completed, he threw another detection magic, tried hard to observe whether there was any foreign matter near the wound, and began to apply healing spells. Do you want me to perform a hypnosis technique on you? The injuries on your shoulders and legs are quite troublesome, or, if you calm down and don't resist, I'll see if the hypnosis technique works. Well, let's use hypnosis. I'll cooperate. Hey, don't throw away all the mud. This mud is very expensive. It's so expensive, Gretel spat at him, and without stopping, he used another cleaning technique. Put this medicinal mud on the wound and use the healing technique. All the leaves, grass roots inside will grow into your body. Are you happy? He is now very proficient in using this spell to debride wounds. The dust, soil, and pebbles embedded in the wounds are all clean and can be thrown into the trash can with just one touch of the spell. Thinking of my past life, using tweezers and cotton balls to debridement bit by bit, I was so tired that I was sweating profusely, and the patient was screaming in pain, so I had to say. Still better with magic. But. There is no but? No but? When there is but, it has been cured. Alas, every time a surgeon sees a patient who comes for treatment and has a wound covered with Yunnan bio, or even a wound covered with incense ashes, a wound covered with stove dirt, or a wound covered with God knows what, he has the urge to hit him every minute. If it is to stop the bleeding temporarily, can you please use a rotating tourniquet, tie the proximal end of the limb with a cloth tape, or apply pressure with clean gauze? Unfortunately, I couldn't find clean gauze. Come on, here is a sanitary napkin. Of course, Gretel does not deny that in this magical world, there are drugs with instant therapeutic effects. However, before the treatment comes down, I should be thoroughly debrided first. Click, click, click. Debride, connect blood vessels, connect muscles, and heal the legs and feet. Debridement, pull out arrows, continue debridement, and organize blood vessels, muscles, fascia, and skin. When Ash Moonsong was spinning around impatiently, almost turning into a black panther again, sharpening her claws on the force field wall, her eyes finally lit up. The partition wall in the operating room disappeared, and Gretel waved to them. Before he could speak, he yawned greatly. It's cured. Great. You're okay, AI-11 UGE's eyes lit up and she ran forward. He grabbed Sisoyan and looked him up and down, even circling him in a circle, before he started to formally introduce him. This is Gretel Nordmark, an 11th level nature servant and an 11th level mage. Gretel, cheer up. I don't want to cheer up, I want to sleep. With a flick of Gretel's hand, the operating table was clean, and the blood, saline, mud, and dead branches and leaves had all disappeared. He was swaying and was about to fall onto the operating table. Ugh, running long distances in the middle of the night, flying hundreds of miles in an ancient vine giant bird, having to fight when you get there, and treating people's injuries after the fight. Let me take a nap, my head is buzzing now, and I'm about to use up my spells. Can't come out anymore. Okay, you can go to sleep. Cyrilla quickly waved her hand. The operating table itself becomes lower, becomes a pillow, becomes softer, and the shadowless lamp disappears. The surroundings were even extra dark. It seemed that although it was not a dark spell, a similar spell was cast so that Gretel could sleep quietly without being disturbed. Ashui Song. Sisoyan. Bernard, so you can't go back to sleep in the ancient vine bird. Gretel slept for more than 10 hours. When he staggered up from the bed and stepped out of the ancient vine bird with 1 foot high and 1 foot low, he immediately heard Cyrilla's shouts coming towards him. We're getting rich. We're getting rich. Gretel, wake up. Come and see, we're getting rich. Gretel quickly gathered a ball of cold water and poured it on his head. While the water flowed through her hair and covered her cheeks, she gave herself a cleansing technique with her backhand. Clean the eye mucus, clean the oil on the face, clean the breath and dental plaque. Cyrilla, you came too fast, you didn't even give me time to brush my teeth and wash my face. But it was obvious that Cyrilla didn't notice this at all. The silver dragon girl rushed over, grabbed Gretel, and led him forward. Gretel, look. So much gold. So much silver. So much. Greed was dragged all the way to the clearing by her before she could stand still. When I looked up, I saw everything in front of me was neat and brilliant. Hundreds of boxes were arranged in a square array in the open space. The lid of each box was opened. In the heavy wooden box, the snow-white silver ingots reflected the sunlight, making people squint their eyes. In the center of the wooden box array, a pile of more than a dozen boxes were piled into a hill. A golden light shot out from the lid of the top box. At the front of the wooden box array, a force field barrier was upside down on the ground. In the bowl-shaped barrier, rubies, sapphires, tourmalines, pearls, and all kinds of gems were brilliant. Bernard, Appa, Mr. Hawthorne, and Ms. Molly stood in a row beside the treasures, their eyes wide. Greet easily heard Mr. Hawthorne murmuring, "Am I dreaming, am I dreaming?" Ashu Isong's face looked slightly normal, but just slightly normal. Only Sisuyan seemed unmoved by the gold and silver. Instead, he put his hands behind his back and frequently looked at the village next to him. There, at the entrance to the village, a row of tall poles was neatly erected. There was a motionless body hanging on each pole, and crows were already trying to peck at it. Farther away, hundreds of soldiers from the old world were squatting on the ground, shivering. In the other direction, a group of natives with sallow faces, obvious red sunburn, and numb eyes have begun to work on their own. Fetching water, living, cooking, taking care of mules and horses. "So, we robbed a team transporting gold and silver," Greet murmured. Thinking of the way Sisoyan was being hunted, he immediately changed his words. "No, is this transport team free to rob locals while working?" They robbed the local indigenous people and harmed several indigenous women. After hearing Greet's question, Sisoyan took the initiative to come over and explain to him. "I was so angry that I attacked them, but I was chased by their leader. If they couldn't catch up with me, they threatened to kill all the natives, if you hadn't rescued them in time." Gretel sighed deeply. "What are you trying to figure out? What do you think these transportation teams are doing? If they cross the road well and don't cause trouble, won't they be able to pass safely? Well now, the leaders have been killed, the soldiers have been captured, the gold and silver transported, I don't care. These treasures are ours anyway," Cyrilla said loudly. She straightened her arms, waved them vigorously, and formed a huge circle in front of her. "If you grab it, it's ours. I'll share one share, Greet, you share one, An obvious look of reluctance flashed across the silver dragon girl's face, and her voice also became softer. "Sister Uge will also share a share, and this elf will also share a share. After all, it was you who did it in the first place, and you were so seriously injured. Of course, how much to divide still needs to be discussed." After all, she and Greet had worked hard all night to open the ancient vine bird, and when they went down to fight, they exerted their greatest strength again. "I don't need these things." Ashu Edge quickly smiled and waved her hands. "Are you kidding me, talking about sharing her money with a dragon, even a silver dragon? Her politeness is already amazingly generous. If I really want to take a silver coin from her, God knows what will happen. Besides, what use would she, an elf forest guard, have for all this gold and silver? Buried beneath the roots of a rich forest? I don't want it either. You have already saved my life." Sisoyan also declined. Without waiting for Cyrilla to speak, he took a step forward and pointed at the soldiers and slaves. "If you feel embarrassed to take this money, please do me a favor. If such a large amount of wealth is lost, these people, whether they are soldiers or slaves, will probably die if they go back. Especially slaves, they are innocent. How to place them?" "This." Cyrilla agreed quickly. However, after only saying 2 words, he got stuck on the spot and turned to look at Gretel. "Gretel, what should I do? In addition to soldiers and slaves, there are also local indigenous people." Greet already frowned. "With such a large amount of money lost, the Governor-General of Pelu will not give up. I am thinking that we have to withdraw several hundred miles to ensure that the enemy cannot find them. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1073. Those humans will definitely come. Before Gretel could finish speaking, Sisuyan took up the topic. The middle-aged elf warrior looked worried. They make 2 trips a year and send people along this road to transport these things. He pointed to the ground, where gold, silver, and all kinds of jewelry were dazzling. This month's delivery was a relatively small one. More than 20 years ago, they lost a box. They responded quickly. 2 or 3 days later, 2 flying knights came from afar. 2 or 3 days later, Gretel was stunned. A knight who can fly starts as a level 15 Sky Knight. It took 2 or 3 days to arrive. Are they just nearby, or is there some long-distance teleportation method that allows them to come quickly? Then what? Then, Sisuian's cheek twitched. Then, they took 100 soldiers and killed the entire valley twice. Even the trees were cut down. A ray of gloom flashed across his face. It was obvious that cutting down so many big trees made this elf more heartbroken than the casualties of the surrounding natives. Greet is concerned about another point. If there are only 2 Sky Knights, it may be teleportation. If there are 100 soldiers brought, then there is a high probability that troops will be transferred from the surroundings, or the Sky Knight will teleport over, and then soldiers will be transferred from nearby stations, such as ports, to follow. In any case, the reaction time left for them is probably only 2 days. And assuming that the dagger has the ability to automatically alarm, deducting the time he spent sleeping, there is only less than 1 day left. Greet immediately asked, "How wide a kill range?" "With the road as the center, 20 miles to the south and 20 miles to the north," Sisoyan recalled. "In addition, they have killed all the high-level monsters within 100 miles. For a box, kill 20 miles on both sides. So, how wide would a corridor be for a whole batch of treasure? 100 miles. 200 miles. Greet thought quickly. Pushing an extra 20 kilometers cannot be achieved simply by doubling the manpower. Among them, it involves the presence of experts, the communication network of personnel, logistical supplies, and even whether the rear force may be empty after a large number of manpower is deployed. Just thinking about it, Greet felt a voice coming up in his mind. Insufficient data to calculate. Insufficient data to calculate. Insufficient memory, system lags. Insufficient memory, system lag. I estimate that they will kill at least a 200-mile wide corridor, Sisuian said coldly. 100 miles to the south, 100 miles to the north. Any further, it would be too expensive, and it is unnecessary. The natives 100 miles away will not come to grab things for no reason. That is to say, the natives and slaves here must be evacuated at least 200 miles away to basically guarantee safety. Greet nodded lightly and looked around. How many indigenous people are there in these 200 miles? There are not many people, only 1,000 at most. But they live scattered. Sisoyan walked through the mountains and rivers nearby and answered without thinking. There are 5 or 6 villages nearby, and the one they robbed was the nearest one. The others lie far away, and the farthest one is almost 200 miles away. In that case, let's remove the slaves first. Greet made a decision immediately. He quickly estimated the number. The slaves squatting on the ground were scattered in piles and piles. It was estimated that there were about 200 people. Let's transfer these slaves away first. Mr. Sisoyan, gather the natives in the nearby villages and get them ready to evacuate. As for the villages that live far away, let them run as far as they can. Far. How do you want to withdraw? AI-11 UGE had been listening quietly at the side. At this time, he interrupted and asked. Evacuate 200 miles in 1 day, do you want to drive that old vine bird? Can it hold so many people? Pretending, is definitely not possible. With Gretel's ability, it can be expanded to accommodate up to 10 people sitting together. Even if it is stacked to the extreme and the volume inside is fully utilized, it can only accommodate 40 or 50 people at most. After holding so many people, the flying speed and magic consumption of the ancient vine bird are extremely terrifying figures. But since Gretel proposed this plan, he was naturally confident. He turned around and smiled at Cyrilla, who opened her eyes wide and pointed at herself. Yeah, that's it. I won't carry them, the silver dragon girl blurted out. She took a step back warily, turned to look at the gold and silver ingots on the ground, and then hesitantly softened her tone. But, apart from other things, I can help a little bit. After all, after taking so much money, I can still help a little bit. Just give me a little help. Gretel smiled, and the warmth in his tone made Ashuej bared his teeth and subconsciously turned his head. Cyrilla, can you do it and give these slave groups the levitation spell? Just float them up? If so, how long can you keep them floating? Definitely, Cyrilla proudly puffed up her chest. I'm an adult. An adult dragon can control the wind and bless these hundreds of people with levitation. It's easy. Does it last, well, 2 hours? 4 hours? 8 hours? She lowered her head and started to clench her fingers. Gretel quickly waved his hand. How about maintaining the levitation technique and firing the ancient vine bird at the same time? Cyrilla, can you do it? Isn't it difficult? The silver dragon girl raised her chin as a matter of course. It's my instinct to control the wind. Can't you do other things just because you activate your instinct? Just like, can't you run because you're breathing? Gretel lowered his head in shame because his breathing was uneven when he ran fast, which caused pain in his ribs. Then it's no problem. He quickly raised his head again and turned to the two elves. Sister Uge, organize these slaves, quickly weave leather ropes, and fasten safety belts on their bodies. Well, the safety belt should be made into a 5-point type, with a ring on each leg, connected in the middle of the legs, and a belt around the waist. Circle, tighten your chest, circle each shoulder. As he spoke, he gestured and used Silent Phantom to outline the shape of the 5-point safety belt and the stress points of each circle. I didn't have time to use leather ropes, so I activated the plants and tied them around my body like this. After they were tied tightly, they were connected one by one to the vines of the ancient vine birds, and Cyrilla added levitation to them. When he said this, Sisoyan had already raised his voice, calling on the slaves to come and line up. The elf warrior pushed and pushed them, pulling them into a square formation. The spear in Ashmoon Singer hit the ground, and green grass blades immediately grew wildly on the spot. Bernard, Appa, Mr. Hawthorne, Ms. Jasmine, please assist Mr. Sisuyan in evacuating people. Greet throws the ancient vine birdie. The brown blackbird flapped its wings twice in the air and grew bigger on the spot. Half a person tall, 1 person tall, 2 meters long, 3 meters long. Thousands of strands of grass entangled all the slaves, continued to grow upward, and penetrated directly into the gaps in the vines. Gretel quickly stepped forward, got into the bird's belly first, and sat down in the driver's seat on the right. Sister Uge. Maintain the plant safety rope. Cyrilla. Bless the levitation technique. Ancient vine bird, let's go. Wait a minute. Wait until I put the things away. There's only 1 box left. Cyrilla ran between the silver boxes. With her hands flying, those heavy gold and silver ingots fell into her hands like they had wings, and then disappeared into her portable storage space. Do you want her to leave here without collecting all the treasures? Sorry, Silver Dragon's style of conduct does not exist in this way. Gretel shouted twice more, and then Cyrilla rushed over with a silver ingot in one hand. He jumped into the cabin, still holding the silver ingot in his left hand, and holding the energy supply center in his right hand. The ancient vine bird flapped its wings, and the strong wind surged beneath it, and it floated into the air. There were screams from below as hundreds of slaves were dragged by straw ropes and floated off the ground. Turn. Turn. Turn around and head north. Sarah, watch the course. Sister Uge, pay attention to maintaining the safety rope and at the same time look for a suitable place to live. Don't worry. Leave it to me. Asterisk 2. The ancient vine bird soared into the sky. The big bird, which is 3 meters long with head and tail, and has a wingspan of 8 or 9 meters wide, has hundreds of bells hanging from its bottom and is heading north with all its strength. Those bells were dancing with their hands and feet and screaming. However, the grass blades were entangled so firmly that no matter how hard they struggled, there was no danger of slipping off. It can only be tossed up by the wind, like a balloon, dragged away by the old vine bird. There is another way. Sisoyan looked up at the sky, opening his mouth wide and forgetting to close it. Silver dragon, even though it is a silver dragon, can bless hundreds of people with levitation at one time. This spellcasting ability is equivalent to that of the elders on Everlasting Island, right? As for integrating these forces together and taking away hundreds of people at once, quickly and efficiently. Can a cub with half-elf blood do this? He sighed slightly and smiled at the Hawthorne couple and Bernard who were left on the ground. Even Appa didn't miss it. Then, he turned to the trembling soldiers and said with a straight face. You guys stay where you are. Whether you live or die depends on your fate. You are not allowed to follow me. I will kill whoever follows you. Well, I hope Uge and the others can fly faster, and I hope Miss Sirera has enough magic power to fly a few more times. Before that, he wanted to notify all the nearby indigenous tribes to quickly gather their people and prepare to move away. In the cabin, Greet sometimes closed his eyes to communicate naturally, and sometimes opened his eyes to check the heading. The ancient vine bird carrying only 3 people, even with a string of bells hanging underneath, was still flying much faster than last night's long-distance flight. Cyrilla, can you hold on? Do you want to slow down a little? No. This is nothing at all, Cyrilla shook her head vigorously. At the same time, she raised the silver ingot with her left hand, brought it to her mouth, and clicked. I'm so hungry, just in time to have some snacks. What? What you mean by eating snacks is just chewing silver ingots? Greet's vision went dark. I thought it would be enough to get a gold coin bed, but I didn't expect that you would also use these precious metals as food. It's over, I can't afford it anymore. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of